Hello, everyone. This is Liz, and welcome to Wednesday, a very hot and humid and gross Wednesday. Hopefully, everyone is staying cool. Just a little programming note, if you hear a noise in the background, that is the fan. Obviously, I'm live from the Derry Public Library, but the library doesn't have the AC on yet. So, we are all making do with the fan. Luckily, with the staff and how much more space, we each get a fan, essentially. But you might hear that in the background. Um, as I said, today is Wednesday, so we're talking about what's on Amazon Prime. And before I get to my regular recommendations, I am going to note two items that are leaving Prime soon. The first is Terms of Endearment. I've recommended this a couple of times in the podcast. Wow, it's hot out. I'm sorry. On this live stream, and I can't recommend this enough. And I'm also just going to take time to plug this great podcast. It's no longer being put out anymore, but it was fantastic, called 80s All Over, where they talked about every film made in the 80s. And they talked about Terms of Endearment. Before that, I kind of just figured it was a weepy movie that wasn't my thing. And thanks to Scott and Drew, the two hosts, they were very vocal about how good this movie was. And I'm like, I went and watched it, and it is now one of my favorite movies. So if you have yet to see this film, or if you kind of falsely dismissed it as I did, take the time to watch it. It leaves Prime May 31st. Whether or not it will still be free on some services, that remains to be seen. The other thing that's leaving is one of my favorite shows of the past 10 years, and that is Hannibal, Bryan Fuller's twisted, beautiful nightmare version of Thomas Harris's Hannibal Lecter universe. This show is fantastic. It is very cinematic in its quality. I think it looks better than some movies put out today. If you love horror, if you love drama, if you love good acting, if you like stuff that's trippy, Hannibal is for you, and that leaves Prime on June 4th. Although, don't worry, it's coming to another streaming service soon, so we'll get to recommend it on another one. Hint, hint, it's Netflix. But yeah, I would say if you have Prime, take the time to watch both of these, and hopefully you'll enjoy one of them. I would say probably more people are going to enjoy Terms of Endearment. Going on for recommendations, the first is for book fans. If you are a fan of Maeve Binchy, specifically her book Tara Road, there was a film adaptation with Andie MacDowell put out in 2006. I am not always inherently opposed to book adaptations. I think they can work. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I mean, the Coen brothers' No Country for Old Men is one of the best movies made in the past 20 years, but if you're looking for something kind of light to watch, or you're a Maeve Binchy fan, that would be a great watch. Up next is a movie that I'm really excited to recommend, and it is Starstruck. And this is a 1983 film directed by Australian director Gillian Armstrong. So you might have heard of her before. I've recommended her version of Little Women, which is the one with Winona Ryder, one of my favorite adaptations. And she is just an extremely talented director. Her big debut was My Brilliant Career with Sam Neill, and I think it's Judy Davis. I cannot believe I'm blanking on the actress's name. I feel really awful, but she is a great director, and this is where I would say streaming services like Prime are doing a great job, because rather than trying to just get the big popular movies everyone wants, they're actually putting a lot of good hidden gems up there that were kind of lost to time for a while. And again, this is another 80s all over recommendation that I'm like, oh, I should look this up. I liked Little Women, and I would watch it. It's a very winning film. It's about a girl who wants to be a singer, and just her, trying to enter a singing competition. It's very winning, and it's one of those where even though it's a small movie, Armstrong directs it in a way where you completely love and care for everyone there. Up next, completely side turn in terms of tone, is the great film Night of the Hunter, starring Robert Meacham, directed by Charles Laughton. This is kind of a crime thriller, neo-noir film. Some people have said it's a horror film. I'm not quite sure it falls into that category. It is definitely frightening because of, what's at stake. But I mean, Robert Mitchum is one of the best villains in cinema history. Fun fact, this movie actually wasn't well received by critics and didn't make a lot of money, and Charles Laughton never directed again after it. But as with a lot of movies, it gets reevaluated through time and it is now considered one of the best thrillers ever made. And I will see this, I don't know if I'd consider this movie a horror movie, but Robert Meacham is downright terrifying in this. And he's also terrifying in the original Cape Fear. Really good actor at being scary. Up next, we're going to go to a foreign film, foreign language, I should say, because technically Starstruck is Australian. That's foreign. And this is the film Dark Water. Not Dark Waters, the Todd Haynes movie that came out last year. This is a Japanese film from 2004. And this came over kind of with the J-horror boom of the early aughts and was also remade with Jennifer Connelly in the J-horror remake boom. Yeah, I don't know how many of those really succeeded, but that's beside the point. What I like about the J horror from this period is that there wasn't an emphasis on gore. There's an emphasis more on ghosts. In Japanese, ghost stories are a part of their their like folklore tradition. And if you like ghost stories, it's very interesting to see kind of how this culture takes that story, and it's a very modern ghost story as well. So if you haven't seen it, would highly recommend it. Next, we're going to Robert Altman with The Long Goodbye, starring Elliot Gould. A lot of people consider this to be lesser Altman, but I mean, Robert Altman has directed so many movies. You can pretty much find something that everyone can find something that they like. It's kind of a comedy slash noir slash crime film, but it is interesting to watch and go like, man, once upon a time, Elliot Gould was one of the biggest stars on the planet. And for someone my age who did not grow up in the 70s, I'm not saying how old I am, I prefer to just be ageless. But it's a little kind of weird for me to realize because I only know him as an older actor, not as a heartthrob, which I didn't know he was. But hey, if you want to tick one off your Altman or you want just a good movie to watch, there's The Long Goodbye. Speaking of other journeyman directors, is The Secret of the Roan Inish. So this is directed by John Sayles, and it's about the Irish folklore, the Selkies. Basically these are sort of shapeshifters. A lot of cultures had the shapeshifter lore who can change from animal to human. And John Sayles this is a fairly, I would say, family friendly movie, not very young children, but like 10 and up. And John Sayles is just a very interesting director because he was someone where he would do one for the studios and one for himself. Actually, John Cassavetes did similar with acting, where he'd take these acting gigs in movies he didn't really like, and then he would use that to finance his own films. But he is a really versatile director, and he can direct anything from a kid-friendly film like this to something like Lone Star, which he was nominated for an Oscar for, to a sci-fi political film like Brother from Another Planet, which you should see. It is not on Prime, at least not with a subscription, but fantastic movie. So I would check this out, and if you like it, check out more of John Sayles, because I mean, he was never a director for hire, but he was definitely I like to kind of push the boundaries with what I'll direct. Another director who does that, I'm not recommending him, is Ang Lee, but if you look at his filmography, definitely a lot of different things. So, on to our final two recommendations. The first is a comedy, and it is an episode of a TV show, but it is also a feature-length film. I'm a huge fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000. It has inspired me in a number of ways. I can quote a lot of episodes pretty much beginning to end. There's a lot of quotes that are thrown around my household. My partner and I were both huge fans. And I mean, granted, as he pointed out to me, you can find it for free, but I did notice this was on Prime. It is the episode of Mystery Science Theater of Space Mutiny, and it is one of their best episodes. It's a bad Battlestar Galactica ripoff. It was also filmed in South Africa during apartheid, so that's a interesting piece of history. And it takes place on a spaceship, yet it's very clearly filmed in a warehouse where you can see windows with light coming through it. It's ridiculous, and Mike and the Bots just rip it apart, and there's so many memorable riffs. And if you've never seen the show, this is actually a good entry point. I mean, what's to explain that? It's a man and robots make fun of bad movies. It's pretty great. My final recommendation is a show. It is hot out if you want something to binge for a few hours while you sit in air conditioning. Hope y'all have air conditioning. the great science fiction BBC show that became kind of a phenomenon in this past decade is Orphan Black. So if you don't know this movie, it is about a woman named Sarah. She is on a subway platform. She sees a woman who looks just like herself jump in front of a train. And that unfurls this entire conspiracy of cloning and secret, not government, but secret corporate, you know, malfeasance and testing. And I am going to say this overall, the plot of the show is kind of messy, but the actress Tatiana Maslany does such a great job as not only Sarah, but all of the other clones that you can't help but want to just keep watching the show. It is a great showcase for this actress, and honestly, I can't think of a better showcase than getting to play multiple different characters that all look like you. And I swear by the end of season one, you will have a favorite clone. Mine's Allison. And I mean, I know Derry, we have all of the seasons. It's a huge hit with our patron base, but if you haven't gotten a chance to watch it, I would say watch it now. So I hope you all have a great day. Stay cool, and I will see you tomorrow with What's on Hulu.